Well, everybody, welcome to the Economic Show on the IBM TV network. Today, we're going to bring our panelists in. Then we're going to discuss our topic of the day. First of all, I'd like to bring in the tax partner at Holt House, Carlin and Vitreek. Blake Christian, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
I
Happy
got
New Year.
I got two more panelists. Then we'll bring our topic of the day up. Sasha Starr is going to be joining us from Modern Investing in Canada. And Dan Worthington's going to be joining us from the Salt Lake City, Utah area, who's with former associate dean of the South Dakota School of Law. But here's the topic that we're going to discuss today. It's Elon Musk, for those who followed it, or Saren Warren on taxes. Who is right? Okay. And if you haven't followed the debate, Elizabeth Warren says billionaires don't pay their fair share, and Elon Musk said, "Go ahead and take a hike. I'm going to pay 11 billion in taxes this year." All right. So we put a poll on LinkedIn, and I'm going to give you the results as we're sitting today. There were 9,974 people who viewed the poll. 275 votes of this. The results were this: 84% believe Elon Musk is correct, and 16% believe Elizabeth Warren is correct. Do billionaires pay their fair share in taxes? So I'm going to move over to our tax expert, Blake Christian, who's a CPA, has a master's in business taxation. And so the thing is, the spotlight's going to be on you, Blake. Who is correct in this debate? Do our billionaires pay their fair share or not? Not that I'm putting you on the spot, but yeah, you're on the spot.
Absolutely, they pay their fair share. So if you pay a 37% marginal federal rate, which all of them are, and then you add in, an average of 5%, 42% of their money is already going to federal and state taxes. Okay. And then when they die, they're going to pay, another minimum 40% tax. And so, they're left with, roughly 30% of what they made. And that ignores sales tax and other taxes they pay. So my philosophy on multimillionaires and billionaires has always been, once they pay a certain threshold, I understand a progressive tax system, and I don't have a overall problem with that the rich pay more than the poor. But at some point, is it Elon Musk's sole responsibility for infrastructure, turning the lights on at the federal and state government level? So my philosophy is, you pick a number. Is it $10 million? But once you've paid that much over your lifetime, you should pay a flat tax. And I think it's ridiculous that they, multi-billionaire like Musk and all the jobs he's created, all the wealth he's created for other people, should have to pay this much money. And Elizabeth Warren is, I'm sorry, but a complete and utter moron to advance the philosophies that she, keeps putting out there.
Okay, I'm going to Dan Worthington. What are your thoughts about this? Do the billionaires pay their fair share of taxes, or as Elizabeth Warren gets her way, they don't pay enough taxes? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, first of all, I have to look at her hypothesis, which is wrong. Elizabeth Warren has always been wrong. Wrong on the law, wrong on the tax, wrong on policy. Pocahontas has made a number of false claims during her political career, and she's just wrong. She might be able to get the progressives behind her, but not very strongly. But she's just wrong on this. I mean, Musk is going to be paying a large capital gain by his own choice, and the tax system is set up by the politicians. It is the system, and they do set the rules. People like Musk and others just follow the rules and pay their taxes. So, I mean, if you confiscated all the wealth of the top 800 billionaires that were taxable in the United States, it wouldn't even put a dent in the tax liabilities or the spending liabilities of the United States. So the the problem is overspending and congressional appetite for projects that they can't afford. And that's really the problem. It's Elizabeth Warren and her ilk who want to give money away to everyone that doesn't want to work for it, doesn't want to do their fair share to make our country productive and to improve themselves and to create marketable skills to be able to make a difference in the world. Instead, they ought to whine on the sidelines and bitch and moan and picket and create fires and do all the shit that they do. When Warren is a really, kind of a piece of work, and everybody knows it. She's out there on the left fringe, and I don't even know why we're considering her as a source of legitimate opinion. Just, she's a senator. I don't know how she gets elected every year, but somehow she squeaks it out every 6 years. But it's a joke.
She's a presidential candidate. I'm going to bring in Sasha Starr. In the meantime, we have a comment from overseas, and I can't read this, so I have no idea what they're saying. Maybe
it's a Russian guy by the name Yaroslav Nikitchenko.
Okay, what is he saying?
No, I think it's
he's saying boom on the gig. I have no idea.
It's on Yandex website.
Okay.
Maybe he has some viable information. What about the?
All right, anyway, we have some Russian guy who's watching. Saying
so we are being watching Russia, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I'm beaming into Ukraine and also Lithuania and Estonia. So the thing is, we have viewers that are on that side, and we're prime time over there. By the way, they comment on our show afterwards all the time. So, but when they come back and they talk to me in Russian, I don't understand their language. Generally, they understand English, so they follow us. But then sometimes, like this guy, sends me something back in Cyrillic, and I'm going like, I'm lost. So anyway, tell us about Elizabeth Warren and the billionaire tax. They follow apparently Elon Musk over in Russia and also in the Ukraine and Lithuania. What are your thoughts about Elizabeth Warren saying he ain't paying his fair share in taxes?
I think Elizabeth Warren is. She has many things wrong, and mostly what she got wrong is her timing. When just a few weeks ago, Elon Musk paid $11 billion in taxes. Do you know what means $11 billion? It's arguably 10 times more than Donald Trump is worth. That's what is $11 billion. And he paid it. He sold some stock of Tesla, but it didn't make any dent in his net worth anyway. So he paid his taxes. So now what she's trying to say is that it has to be $12 billion, $17 billion, $100 billion, $5 trillion. Where is she coming from, and what really she's trying to articulate? It goes beyond me. I think she's a cheap populist, really. That's all what she is.
Okay, I'm going to give you the arguments that I've seen, and the Honorable David M. Walker will be joining us, usually just as Blake leaves. He shows up.
I'm staying today.
You're staying today? Okay, so then you can talk to him about it, because he wanted the op-ed on this. But here's part of the opinions that she was espousing, that the billionaire class is only paying 4.3% of their net worth increase. In other words, during the pandemic, their net worth increased a lot because the value of their stock portfolios went up tremendously, and their total income tax bill, in other words, their total taxes they paid, were only 4.3%. Now, the argument she makes as a populist, she goes, well, and everybody knows it, if you work in the United States and you get W-2 income, the first 15.3% is taken out in Social Security and Medicare taxes. So don't we have a class of people, which I'm going to call the working class, that are at an economic disadvantage, where if you're working for a living, you get hit with 15.3%. If you're a billionaire, you pay 4.3%. Yes, Blake, we're going to put you on the hot seat here. So what's the story? This is the defense, the apologist for Elizabeth Warren.
This is the typical, just outright lying, so yeah. It's apples and oranges. She's talking appreciation. They haven't monetized those gains, okay? And so she's making it sound like they're not writing checks when they really got income. Well, income is only taxable when it's recognized. Okay, when you actually sell those stocks, and those stocks or land or whatever else they own can go up and down, and that's why the IRS doesn't measure the tax until it's monetized and turned into cash. And so anyway, the analogous situation would be, yeah, if you were going to get a salary of 200,000, Nick, but your employer held back 100,000 of it, you'd only get taxed on 100,000. And it's the same thing for these rich people. Until they sell those stock, there's not a taxable event.
And I know, and I do understand it.
No, I know you know.
Okay,
I know you know. But
yeah, unrealized capital gains
Yeah.
is the way to become wealthy in America. Okay, working is not the way to become wealthy in America. Another good way is to inherit money. So anyway, Dan, what are your thoughts of this? She wants to basically tax unrealized capital gains. What are your thoughts on that?
No, that would be a very poor tax policy for the United States, given the markets, and especially someone like Elon Musk, who would then have to liquidate further stock reserves to create the dollars to pay for the thing. It would be regressive, I think, in terms of productivity and growth in our markets. The other thing that Blake failed to mention is the surtax that the rich pay. So they already do pay a surtax for if their income exceeds a certain amount, and more if it's in trust. And of course, the Build Back Stupid plan actually increases those taxes and those penalties, and hits trusts at a much lower level at just 200,000 in net worth. And I think, tax policy is tax policy. Whatever Congress agrees to do is what they agree to do. But Pocahontas won't get her way. There aren't the votes to support it. And Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, same thing. Anyway, she won't get her way. I mean, it's just one of her wild left-wing attempts to try to take money from the rich and to give to the non-working people who don't do anything to generate productivity in the United States. And so, and people come in here illegally, by the way. So, I think that we should be putting Americans first, American jobs, Americans that provide productive products for the United States and the world, and those who produce capital and create the engines of enterprise moving forward to generate the jobs and help bring us a prosperity. It's work to help us become a great economy, one of the greatest in the United States. The CCP is trying to change that through a number of their strategies. But, God bless America, and God bless the way our capitalistic system does work.
Yeah, and speaking of which, for those people that don't know, our network is moving to a place called Roku on March 1st, 2022. For the people around the world, in the United States, Roku's pretty big. There's like 59 million subscribers on Roku. So the program's going to be the same, but it's also going to be available on Roku on March 1st, 2022, with 65 other shows that are in our network starting March the 1st. Just want to let you all know that. But now we'll get back to Elizabeth Warren and her tax policies or non-tax policies. This is a stat that she also brought up, and this is very interesting. 70% of the Americans don't have $1,000 in cash in savings. I mean, when you read this, you're going like, are you serious? Now, most of them are not watching our show. Because we don't have $1,000. I don't know what they're doing when you don't have $1,000 today. How are we going to address this issue, Blake? In other words, if we're not going to rob from the rich like Elon Musk and the billionaire class, and I want to bring this stat into Dan Worthington. Okay, this stat was put up by your friend Pocahontas. 70% of the Americans don't have access to $1,000 in cash. No, we don't have
And
1,000.
everybody has a cell phone, and most females have a a Fendi purse or a
they have the Gucci bag. They have a
Louis
Gucci
Vuitton
bag.
purse. Yeah, I
Right.
mean,
You got a Gucci bag. You have your Apple cell
Yeah.
phone. You have
And your
Gucci bag.
42-inch screen at home.
Right. You have your 42. You're right. You have a 55-inch television screen at home. But here's the realities: 70%. If they had to rush to the bank to get $1,000, Blake, they don't have it. What are we going to do about this? I look at this being a major problem in the United States, where
we've talked about it on other shows, and it's education. In high school, it should be mandatory to have a financial budgeting class. A lot of the kids don't get that at home, and they need to understand how does a bank account work, how does a credit card work, how do taxes work. So they come out of school with no clue. They have a debit card and a credit card. They don't even have a checking account anymore, so they don't even know the ins and outs of what they're spending. But that's an education problem in my mind, and to redistribute wealth is not going to fix that problem. It's a state senator. No, I can't remember who told me this, but I think it's a very valid point. And people spend their money in the cadence that they make it. So in other words, a lotto winner is going to blow the money, or a trust fund kid is going to blow the money very quickly. But that person that was a wage earner and then started a business and slowly made their fortune is going to be very systematic in how they spend their money. And that's the problem we have in the United States right now. And in all these windfalls that people got during COVID from the government has not helped budgeting. So,
okay. All right. We'll go back to Sasha, and we have another comment from your friends in Russia. I can't understand what they're saying. They keep beaming in comments.
I think it's about chess.
I can't even say their name.
But hold on, Nick. It's not the same person, though.
It's not the same person.
No, this is a girl by the name Yana Zabolotnaya.
Oh, Yana Zabolotnaya, of course.
She's relying on the same website of some kind.
Okay. All right. Anyway, the thing is, I guess they're pretty interested in what goes on here in the U.S. I know we got a big following of it because it's prime time, if you don't know it, Lithuania and Ukraine and Russia, where we're beaming into. So the thing is, 70% don't have $1,000 in cash, and they're probably looking at us going, are these Americans stupid or what? What are your thoughts about this,
Nick? Very few people remember that more than 100 years ago, in 1917, there was a Russian so-called Great Revolution. As a result of a revolution and several years implementing everything what they were planning to do, not 70%, 100% of people in Russia didn't have not $1,000 in cash. They wouldn't have even $10 in cash. They would have nothing. And this is where it failed so miserably and so obviously. And I'm surprised that today people just either they forgot about it or they never knew about it. They ignorant. And it's just incredible. The last thing what you should do is disempower the individuals who actually can make a lot of difference in everyday's life of Americans, and not only Americans. So if you will take away power from them, whom are you going to give it? People who have no ideas, no experience, no knowledge of any kind. So, what's the plan here? It should be almost forbidden and prosecuted on every level. Really.
Yeah, I mean it's a real problem with that on our network. We do have a financial education show that runs every Wednesday. We're going to take a brief commercial. We'll be right back. And
I would like to add something, Nick, if I may,
I'm
because I live in Canada, and of course I know
Yeah.
probably more than other people what's happening in Canada. In the 90s, the wealthiest people in Canada were Reichman's brothers. There were three brothers, and they were worth billions of dollars at that time. And actually, the very interesting thing is that Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce lent them $2 billion without looking at any financial documentation. They didn't see their balance sheets, they didn't see anything. Just because of their names, they gave them $2 billion. Now, they failed at the end of the day because they were building London Docklands, and the government of England promised to build a railway line, a subway line from city to Docklands area, and that was delayed. And because of that, their project failed. At the end of the day, the project succeeded, and now the Docklands, of course, it's one of the best business areas in London. But what I wanted to say that is that there was a study done by the University of Toronto. They come with a formula or with a hypothetical situation where all the wealth of Reichman brothers and many other wealthiest family would be liquidated, split up, and divided evenly between all Canadians. So every Canadian person would get the equivalent of probably $7,000 or $8,000, including children and whoever. And then what would happen 2 years later? What happened 2 years later is that Reichman brothers would again become the wealthiest individuals, and all others, they would spend this $1,000 in the casinos and everywhere else, and they would be just as poor as but at the moment when they got their fortunes.
Yeah, I've seen those studies before, and I agree with that because of the lack of financial education. They get the dollar, they don't know what to do with it, so they don't buy Apple stock, they buy Apple phone. And Apple stock is a better investment. Then Apple phone goes down, Apple stock goes up. What are your thoughts about this, Dr. Dan? 70% of Americans don't have $1,000 in cash. What's the problem here? What's the solution?
Well, I agree that the problem is financial education and lack of proper education, probably a lack of proper work preparation, and having the marketable skills, and a combination of those things, because each situation is different. There is a problem with poverty in the United States, and for the people who are truly in those situations or disabled or having difficulties like that, there are programs to help handle that. But the issue really is financial education with the numbers so distorted like that, because we know that everyone got a $1,400 stimulus check this last year, not to mention the other smaller stimulus checks, and they'll probably get one more if Biden has his way. We'll see, but it seems not to have made a dent in the way people consume or the way they see the world in terms of their responsibility. By shifting the responsibility to a model of government dependence, you actually enslave the people rather than empower them and make them more responsible for their decisions. And so socialism and the ilk, Pocahontas' ilk, really has never worked. It never will work. And it's a system that is doomed to fail. What it ends up doing is creating a system of rationing and bringing everyone down to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah,
We've seen it in many cultures already,
mm-hmm.
And it's a recipe for failure, always has been, and that is the big lie of socialism and communism.
Yeah,
those who have experienced those woes and have been also experienced war and the ravages of it and served their country, so understand that lesson. People, Pocahontas, who've lived in ivory towers and lied about their credentials all their lives, don't really know the reality of anything. She hasn't really had to work a day in her life, really.
Yeah,
So
well, she got 15% of the vote, though, and
yeah, no,
85%
but
went to
again, it's
Elon
the
Musk.
wacko vote, right?
Okay, well, let's look at another statistic, okay? Because what Sasha said was correct. If you took one person's wealth divided equally, then you just get pennies on the dollar. But there is a study that shows if American wealth is so skewed that if it was divided equally among everybody, the average American would have $700,000. So don't we have a real problem in the United States with a skew of the wealth into the top 1% or the top 10%? And I'll start with you, Blake. In other words, we're looking at a group of people that have all the money and everybody else being bloody broke. Isn't this a tax and economic fiasco, aka the Romanovs, or the what do they call it, the Palace of Versailles, waiting to happen again here in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, there's no disputing there's a massive divide between the ultra wealthy and the poor, but again, the poverty level, the poverty level person in the United States is so much better off than somebody in poverty in other countries. Again, I mean, the poorest people in this country have big screen TVs, they've got subsidized housing, they've got, yeah, I mean, there are people maybe low on food, but there's not as many people starving as they indicate. There's food kitchens everywhere, free health care. I mean, the level of the quality of the poverty level person is better, than any other country, I would argue. And you're not going to fix it by, so let's say we did that, and we said, okay, now everybody has a net worth of $700,000. The problem is $700,000 in everybody's pocket isn't going to create the jobs and things where you have the concentration of income. Again, Elon Musk has tens of thousands of employees in his multiple companies, and that multiplier effect is huge. That's the whole backbone of capitalism. And for all the beating up that's happened over the last decade about capitalism, there's no better system. And Sasha can speak to that probably better than anyone else on here. But we see it all the time. Some poor immigrant comes here and creates massive wealth. There's no problem in that. Sasha?
Christian, one very quick question. If everybody would get hypothetically $700,000, where Elon Musk will find employees for his projects?
Excellent point.
I'd love to know.
We're seeing that right now.
Absolutely.
Even without $700,000, nobody wants to work.
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay. Yeah, no, it's a big problem that we have right now. In other words, if you give a lot of people money, then they'll sit around and they won't do anything. And it seems to be that seems to be a pretty much an issue. But 700,000 also seems like a lot of money. It shows the dispersion of wealth concentrated in the short percentage of people. If this keeps occurring, because this has been a trend that's been going on for years, won't we have another potential revolution blooming, Sasha, like they had when the Romanovs were basically overthrown by the communist, or I guess it was Lenin back then, the Bolsheviks, back in, what was it, 1917 or something like that? I mean, aren't we creating an underclass of people that eventually will revolt? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think what's happened in Russia in 1917 is so removed from what's today in America. It's like basically distance from Earth to Mars, for example. I'll tell you what's happened. First of all, don't forget that the revolution, the Bolshevik revolution, to speak, it happened in October of 1917. But guess what? The Romanov was displaced and dislodged by February of 1917. So there was a time between Romanov losing his power. Actually, he himself denounced his status as a Tsar, and his brother refused to take over the power of Russia. So there was a temporary committee that was ruling Russia until there would be some kind of total or total institutions that would declare the new Russian Republic and would declare all kind of laws, including election laws, or so on and so on. And when Bolshevik took the power, and finally that assembly took place, the Bolsheviks arrested everybody who participated in this meeting, throw them in jail, and that was the end of not only democracy, it was the end of traditional Russia. And this is why there is a lot of questions about even legality of all Russian governments, started with Lenin and afterwards, including today's. It's not a democratically elected election. There is not representative government, and so on and on. But it's another story. What we are discussing now is that, in fact, thanks to a Russian revolution in the 20s and 30s in the West, even at the time of the Depression, there were a lot of new laws as to profit sharing, as getting better working conditions for workers and less working hours or so on, because the governments of Western Europe and including the United States, they knew on an example of what happened to Russia, what to avoid, and they definitely made all the capitalistic system much more flexible and much better equipped to move into forward with all the advancements and the guarantees and advantages of the capitalistic system, enhanced by what they were trying to avoid of what happened in Russia.
Yeah, I'm going to speak a bit on this issue of unrealized capital gains, because I've had some practical experience with this. Why is it fair that if somebody invests in something like real estate, make $200,000, okay, in unrealized capital gains, but then if you go to work for somebody and you're doing work for somebody, you have to pay 15.3% Social Security, Medicare tax. You got to pay state income tax. You have to pay personal income taxes. So Blake, and I've had some personal experience with this. A person who is investing who has assets to invest, and they make $200,000 because of unrealized capital gains, pays zero taxes. The clown who's out there working pays huge amounts of taxes for the same $200,000. Why would you say that's a fair tax policy?
I love this question, and here's why. Because the only way you have that money to invest in real estate, unless you inherited it, is you probably earned that, and you probably paid ordinary tax rates on that, as I went over earlier. So you've probably only have 60 cents on the dollar at most. That's ignoring your FICA Social Security tax you paid. So it's really probably 50 cents on the dollar that you're left with. And then you took that hard-earned money and you made an investment in real estate. And now when you sell that, why should you get taxed at the same rate? Because you've already paid tax on the money you invested. And so that's part of the logic. And Dan brought up a good point earlier. I had left out the 3.8%, what we refer to as the Obamacare tax
surcharge.
And that comes into play for people that make over $400,000 of modified adjusted gross income, and you pay another 3.8% on top of the 37% marginal rate for federal. So you're paying 40 cents on the dollar just on federal. On short-term gains. On long-term gains, it's 23.8 under the current law. So that 23.8 on top of the 40% that you paid when you earned it on your W-2, that's a pretty big hit, you know. So that's why you have that secondary rate that looks beneficial at a first glance, but it's very logical that, you know, you shouldn't have to pay ordinary rates twice.
Yeah,
And you're going to pay your heirs are going to pay 40% plus when you die.
well, that's if you have more than 23 million. So,
Yeah.
you know, they push that rate up. Dan, what are your thoughts about this? I mean, in law school, they never told me that it's better to be an investor and create unrealized capital gains as opposed to be a worker where you're going to be taxed very heavily. What are your thoughts on this? Doesn't the system favor wealthy people?
Let's look at the current markets.
Unrealized capital gains.
Let's look at the current markets. Okay, right now real estate is worth a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But we could see a correction and suddenly it could dive.
That's true.
You haven't realized those
I haven't
gains.
seen that yet.
The stock market's in a similar position right now.
Mhm.
It's highly inflated. Those who choose to invest take the risk of losses and market risk. Those could go down significantly. So until those gains are realized, they're not true gains. They're not true income. They're not taxable. They're not realized. They're not reckoned. That's why the rule is what it is. And you know, the machinery of investment and capital growth is the thing that drives the American economy. It helps provide those jobs. You know, so you may not want to work in an hourly job getting W-2 income. Many people are electing out of that to sit on their butts 6 months of the year, at least, to draw unemployment. But it's, you know, it's the system we have. You can go start your own business. Many people have. You know, there's no limit to opportunity in the United States for people who want to watch YouTube and learn a skill. Like Elon Musk said, you can learn anything nowadays.
On YouTube.
Go and start a business. I mean, you know, God bless America. Free enterprise still is the way to go. And people with skills who develop those skills, those marketable skills, can do very well in the United States. Anywhere from the trades to running a broadcast network like you're doing right now.
It's pretty cool.
I mean,
Sasha, tell us your story, because it sounds to me you start off as a pianist, chess player, but that's not where you made your money. Tell us your story, and you didn't do it in the United States. You were in Canada. And
no, actually, by education, I'm a pianist musician, and my first years I was performing, and I was one of the top 3 pianists in Toronto area, and I played in any significant venues. However, in 1986. I visited my friend in Vancouver, Grandmaster Duncan Suttles, whom I personally knew before. He invited me to his apartment for dinner. And on the way to his apartment, we stopped at his office. And it was Sunday, 9 o'clock in the evening. And the office was full of people, and I was surprised how in Canada people are working 9 o'clock in the evening on Sunday. And I asked him that, and he said that, well, look, we are releasing a new software in a few days, and everything has to be ready by that time. So this is led me to invest essentially all my money, what I had at the time. I invested. It was a small public company traded on Vancouver Stock Exchange, and invested all the money at 50 cents. In a few months, stock went up to $4.70, and they were quite successful. Of course, I had no knowledge or a way to calculate what kind of risk I was taking, and I'm glad that I didn't know about anything about the risk at that time. And that's how to make 5 times as much as I was making as a pianist, although I was making pretty good money. And when I realized that I cannot play 5 pianos at the same time, I drastically changed course of my life, and started to invest more and more. Then I had my own public company, which did quite well. And there are a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah, and then we have you on the Modern Investing Show, which really
Well,
appreciate. Actually, I've made more money on your show than anything else I've ever done.
Thank you.
It's really a really great show, and for the people that want to learn how to invest, I bring a lot of people into that show. It's a great way, practical tools and tips of investing. We've been joined by the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, and thank you for joining us, David. We have a little debate going on. It's between your friends, you probably know her, Elizabeth Warren. She lives up your way, and another gentleman that lives our way called Elon Musk. And their debate is basically on billionaires paying their fair share in taxes. What are your thoughts about this? You've seen the arguments. Are the billionaires paying their fair share of taxes, or are we giving them a free pass? What are your thoughts, David?
Well, first, I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. We've got about 8 inches of snow on the ground, and it's still coming down here in Washington. And yesterday it was 63 degrees, so it's a little bit crazy. But in any event, look, I do think that there are legitimate issues with regard to how our tax system works in connection with very wealthy people who do not make their money through wages. And I, it's, I know the argument about Elon Musk. He does do a lot of things that are very innovative, that frankly benefits society and in some cases benefits the U.S. government as well. But that's different than how much are you paying in income taxes versus how much you might be contributing in other ways. And I think that one of the things that ultimately is going to get considered is whether or not there's some type of a minimum tax that is based on wealth. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what kind of minimum tax would that be and how difficult would it be to administer it? Let's say you taxed 1% of accumulated wealth for people that are worth more than, pick a number, $100 billion, billion dollars. Okay. You're going to generate some revenue, but you're probably not going to generate as much revenue as Elizabeth Warren thinks you're going to generate. Okay. I mean, what's 1% of $1 billion? Okay. And multiply that with the wealthiest person in the country, who's worth about $200 billion. So, I mean, you can generate tens of billions of dollars if you do this, but you're not going to come close to solving our financial problems.
Okay, that's fair enough. So what should we do? Should we have a tax for unrealized capital gains, David? Is that what you're looking at?
No, I'm not talking about a tax on everybody for unrealized capital gains. What I'm saying is that I think we're going to end up having a debate about for super wealthy people. You can define what super wealthy is. Okay, in my view, it's nothing less than $100 million. You could argue that it's higher than that. But my point is that when you get to people that have that much wealth, they don't make their money through wages.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as a result, make some choices as to whether they're going to liquidate some of their investments in order to be able to pay a minimum tax that's associated with their wealth.
Mm-hmm.
The real question is, how do you administer it? Is it administrable?
Yeah, well, that's also a good question. Blake, what are your thoughts about the billionaires tax? I know that Elon Musk doesn't like it, but are we heading toward a situation where we do need a billionaires tax? Also, I want to let David know that on March the 1st, the network moves to this place called Roku. So we're going to be on Roku across the world starting March the 1st. We'll still do our own thing the way we're doing it, except it'll be broadcast on you can actually pick up the whole network on Roku starting March the 1st. Okay, so tell me what are your thoughts about this billionaire tax?
Well, I don't think it's needed, but I think it's inevitable with the, kind of the public sentiment that, tax the rich and redistribution of wealth that, I agree with David, it's going to be the big debate issue. And at some point, it'll probably come. I would I would argue that like founders stock, should be excluded from that. If you've got a bunch of marketable securities, real estate, things like that, fine. But somebody that starts a business and has a bunch of founder stock tied up in it, I don't think that's that's a fair measure of what should be taxed. But I think it's going to come eventually. I tell all my clients, it's taxes are going to increase undoubtedly from where we are, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
I've said before, and I'll say it again. Income tax rates will never be lower than they are right now. They're
I
only
agree.
going one way, and that's up. Okay, and they are how fast. But that's different than a wealth tax. Okay, I mean, what I'm saying is, I can see having an argument about a minimum tax that's associated with wealth. That doesn't mean you don't change the income tax. That doesn't require you to change the income tax system. All right. But the point is, in addition, most of the super wealthy people, whether it's Elon Musk or, whether it's
Bill Gates.
or Bill Gates or whatever, they have
Jeff
plenty of
Bezos.
public stock. Okay. I mean, they may have been a founder and created great wealth, but ultimately, in order to realize that wealth, they ended up going public in order to be able to do that. So you have to recognize that most of the people that Elizabeth Warren is talking about are super wealthy people,
Right.
and not the average American. And as we've talked about many times, really wealthy people don't make their money in wages.
Yeah.
Which means that, means it's not only an income tax issue, it's a payroll tax issue.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, they don't. Which also, I'm going to put this to Dr. Dan. What are your thoughts about this billionaire fair share tax? And why are we cuddling to the billionaire class?
I don't think we are. I think that David makes it an interesting point. But like Musk, he's going to pay how many $1 billion?
Right now, he's scheduled to pay $11 billion in tax.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of money. As one person said, that's 10 times more than the current the last former president of the United States has in his net worth. And you have to look at billionaire wealth in a different way. Now, and there's if there's something that is akin to income, like dividend income or some kind of income that's recognized that they can be taxed on, maybe some of the corporate loopholes can be closed at the higher level. I don't know. But it's, the tax system is what the tax system is. And I don't think there's a fairness issue here. The Social Security tax is what it is. Employers, Elon Musk pays a tremendous amount of Social Security tax. He pays half of his employees' wages.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
that part is never brought up, even though there's unrealized capital gains. You have corporate income taxes that are paid generally.
Yeah, no. So there's a burden placed on employers, especially corporations that have employees, especially the number Musk has.
Yeah,
those employees only pay half that of a person who's a small business, that kind of thing. They pay 15.7% or so, 15.4, whatever the number is, in Social Security and Medicaid tax. Yeah. Well, the corporations have to pay their employers. They pay half of that tax, so they are taxed. And so that number isn't 11 billion; it's far greater than that. And whiners like Elizabeth Warren, who really haven't contributed much to society in general, and just want to give away the social dole to people who really don't want to earn it and don't really want to develop the marketable skills to be productive in today's society. I feel for people who are disabled and have a legitimate, issue with being able to work. We should help provide them. We do, but we should look at doing more of that. But folks that that are able-bodied, capable, that's a different matter. You know, the giveaway programs are just too much.
Yeah.
Let me clarify something. Okay.
Sure.
Let's take Elon Musk. Let's say Elon Musk is worth $200 billion, which he's not, but it's close to it. Okay. If you had a wealth tax of 1% per year, all right. So 1%, 1% of $200 billion is $2 billion. If he's paying $11 billion, it's not a problem. That's not the issue. And in fact, if you had a minimum tax, you can even allow a credit. You know, so if you pay too much this year, he could get a credit in the future. Look, there's a real issue here, okay? There's a real issue that's going to ultimately get resolved. And the question is, how do you get it resolved? You don't change the whole income tax system to deal with this. Although I will tell you that our biggest problem financially is spending programs. And Elizabeth Warren doesn't want to do a dang thing about the spending programs. In fact, she wants to add more spending and grow government even more. And that's mindless. That makes no sense at all. All right. At the same point in time, we're kidding ourselves if we don't think that something's ultimately going to get done on this. And the other point that I would make is this is a drop in the bucket as compared to the financial hole that we're in. And what we need to do in order to be able to put ourselves on a prudent and sustainable path.
Wait, David, I have one proposal. If you will designate a super rich, not people starting with $100 billion worth, but $10 billion. 10 billions, it is super rich by all level of imagination. And you will take this money and direct it towards the Medicare and social services, where the United States is in the hole of, I don't know, $200 trillion.
65 trillion.
How much?
65 trillion for discounted present value for Social Security and Medicare. No, I hear you.
Okay.
Designate it to
but
something.
Okay, at least it's a move, and if you do it year after year.
Yeah, that's an idea.
No, I hear you, and I thought about that too. I mean, the idea that we're still going to have to reform those programs, okay? But last thing I do this and then say you got more money to spend when you're already spending more money than you have.
Yeah.
Okay, there's one more thing that came out in the conversation. It deals with the average American, and here's what pretty interesting stat, David. The average American, 70% of them, more than the average American, don't have $1,000 in cash. In other words, if they had to go to liquidate all their liquid assets, they don't have $1,000. What are we doing about this where the average American doesn't have $1,000 in their pocket?
Nick, after paying liquidators his fees, they will actually go.
They'll owe money. I mean, the thing is, don't we have a serious problem here with the average American in the United States? They'll have their Apple iPhone, they'll have their computer, they'll have their car, but then if you ask them, well, can you go to the bank and get $1,000? They go, I don't have $1,000 in the bank. What's your thoughts on that one?
Well, it's shocking to me. Okay, I have seen stats recently with regard to how much the typical person has who's approaching retirement age for retirement. Okay, which is a lot more than $1,000, but a lot less than what they're going to need in order to have a decent income in retirement. So, part of the problem is that you also have to have incentives for people to do things. And one of the things that's happened is government has grown so big. And government programs have grown so big, a lot of people think government's going to take care of them. Mm-hmm. And people like Elizabeth Warren want government to take care of them.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. Is there any way that we can create some financial education that will help these people out? Because I believe in schools today across the country, they're starting to bring financial education classes, but a lot of the schools around the United States don't have any financial education whatsoever. And the school teachers probably aren't the people to teach them because they don't have financial education either. In other words, they don't know to go to Sasha's show and look for high quality dividend stocks and get involved in some of these nice opportunities for people. Is there a way that we can create a mandatory financial education classes for everybody in the United States? Because now, if you give them $1,000, they'll say, "Oh, God, that's great. I'll buy an iPhone with it." What are your thoughts
Well,
on that?
in my view, 2 types of courses ought to be mandatory at no later than the high school level that aren't being taught to a vast majority of people today. One of which is financial literacy, and it ought to be taught by people who know something about it. Okay. And you'd get plenty of people who would be willing to do that. All right. And secondly is civic responsibility. Those are 2 huge voids in our current education system. The problem is that you've got also a difference between the division of responsibilities between the federal government and state and local government. Schools are the responsibility of local government. All right. And so now, in theory, you might be able to attach it to federal aid to say that if you want federal aid, for education or in some area, then you must include this as part of your curriculum. We can talk about how best to make it happen, but does it need to happen? Absolutely, positively, yes.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of time that they have it. And speaking about time, we're at the hour, so I do want to thank our special guest, the Honorable David M. Walker, former Comptroller General of the United States, Blake Christian, tax partner at Holt House, Carlin and Van Trike from Salt Lake City, Utah, actually Park City, but that's the high end of Salt Lake City. We have Sasha Starr from Modern Investing in Toronto, Canada, and of course, we have Dan Worthington, the former Associate Dean of the University of South Dakota School of Law. We do want to thank our viewers in the Ukraine, Lithuania, especially because they show up in Russia. And you missed that earlier today. We had several comments. I had to have Sasha read them because they were in Russian. David, I don't read Russian. And apparently they speak English. So
nervous in that neighborhood now.
They send Russian back to me. And I'm going like, I don't understand what they're saying.
It's a tough neighborhood.
Yeah, so I guess it is a tough neighborhood over there. And thank our viewers around the world. And we'll see you next week on economics next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.